What's going on, you guys? My name's Michael Elefante, and my wife and I have made millions of dollars in real estate by doing short-term rentals, or as many of you refer to it as Airbnb properties. So what I'm gonna do in this video is just walk you through chronologically how we actually got started just over 3 years ago and how we were able to scale to today, some of the mistakes we made along the way, and some of the things that honestly I would have done differently to scale faster. My wife and I started at the end of 2019. We have thought about real estate for years before, but we decided ultimately to focus on short-term rental properties, and we got our first Airbnb. I think it was the end of October we actually closed on that property. Now, the funny thing, or the mistake I made early on, was not realizing how much money it costs to furnish a larger property. The first property we got, we were like 2 feet in. We got a 4-bedroom property with a rooftop terrace in Nashville, Tennessee. We had done all the right research and picked a good market, picked a good location, knew who we were catering towards from a traveler perspective, but I did not realize the cost to furnish the property until we actually did it. So, funny enough, I had just finished paying off a nice truck, a GMC Sierra 1500 that I love dearly. I bought it when I lived down in Texas. We sold that truck and traded it in for a Honda CR-V, one of my least favorite cars I've ever driven, in order to have enough funds to furnish that property. We were all in for about $110,000. Now, I know that may sound like a lot to some of you out there, but just remember, we were thinking about this for years before actually getting into it. And I'm gonna cover some strategies to get started with less money later in this video. So we bought that first property, and it took a couple months to ramp. It was slow season in Nashville, December, January, February. But in March of 2020, we were set to cash flow after all expenses and mortgage paid over $7,000 in 1 month. That was like the light bulb moment. We knew that we were gonna go headfirst into the deep end on short-term rentals and never look back. Now, as we all know what happened in 2020, COVID hit, and we had a ton of cancellations, and there was kind of like wonky travel for the next 12 months or so in Nashville. My wife and I went out on a limb and liquidated our retirement accounts, sold our 401k, sold our IRA in order to have enough funds for our second property, which we closed on in April, I believe, of 2020. And that was also in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, while those two properties ramped, the cash flow was less than fantastic per se. Those two properties today, though, are consistently cash flowing $6,000 to $6,500 per month. So they're both netting us over 70 grand per year, if my math is right. And now the third property we scaled, we actually saved up money from work, and we saved up some of the cash flow that we had from those two properties, and we pivoted and invested in a property in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. So we set up this third property, and in the first full month, it was live on Airbnb and Vrbo. I think it was November. That was the first full month. We cash flowed like 8 or 10 grand just on that one property. And between the 3 properties, we cash flowed nearly $15,000 in 1 month. So we had a 10-year plan of becoming financially free, meaning have our cash flow or our passive income completely pay for our lifestyle or living expenses. And in that month, we had done it just 11 months after getting our first property. So this is, again, like just validation that this was the right strategy for us. And we very quickly scaled to get our fourth property. And with this one, it was interesting. We actually leveraged some of the real estate we already had. We did a cash out refinance on our primary residence in Nashville, and we were able to pull out a decent chunk of money, and we partnered with somebody we also networked with in Nashville to go 50-50 on the fourth property, which also is in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. The reason we wanted to partner with this couple, Ben and Amy, Ben was a house flipper and home builder in Nashville, so he had the skill set to take a property and turn it into something much better, and we didn't have to outsource all of the GC work. So we found a property that we knew could be a killer Airbnb, but also we could change some things, add a room, do whatever work to boost the after repair value, the ARV. And by doing that, you're able to then do cash out refinances down the road and then pull all that equity back out to then reinvest. And I'm going to get into this in a minute, but this is how we were able to scale so fast and be able to make so much more cash flow and return on the equity that we created. So this fourth property, we stood up, I think we launched in April of 2021, and it was an instant success. This is the month that my wife and I finally decided to cut ties and fire our boss, quit our jobs, and we hopped in a camper van and decided to travel for the next year. And it's crazy the amount of time that we were working our 9-to-5 jobs, sometimes 6 hours a day, sometimes 12 or 13 hours a day, just like putting in the work and grinding to make a salary and make some commissions. We were able to make more than that with just 4 properties, working 2 to 4 hours a week from our phones while traveling in a van. It's honestly mind-blowing. July of 2021 was the first big month that we had. We cash flowed over $50,000 net cash flow in our pocket on 4 properties. So another light bulb moment for us. The first one was, oh my gosh, this could maybe set us financially free sooner than possible. And then this light bulb moment was like, holy crap, like this could make us very wealthy or very rich way faster than we thought. Again, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme per se, but it is a faster path to financial freedom and wealth than most people understand. So at this point in time, we wanted to focus on evening out our cash flow throughout the year. Although Gatlinburg and Nashville are not hyper-seasonal markets, they're still much busier from, call it March through October, and Gatlinburg tends to stay busy through the end of December as well. But January and February are quite slow for both of those markets. So what we wanted to do is find a market that would be able to produce high cash flow during the winter and early spring months and maybe not be as busy the rest of the year. This would give us consistency on our monthly cash flow. What we ultimately stumbled on was Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we ended up buying 2 additional properties in that market. One was a value add property, and then the second property was a little more turnkey, but it was not a vacation rental before, so we just had to add design and furniture. Those 2 properties we completely funded by doing 3 cash out refis on 3 of our other investments. The second property we got in Nashville had appreciated. We had so much equity sitting there that we decided to take that out and repurpose it and get a higher rate of return on the total equity by moving that to another investment. And then the 2 Gatlinburg properties we did some work to. One we did a lot of work to. So it went from a $500,000 purchase price to a $1.2 million appraised value in just 13 months. So we were able to pull out, I think it was like $700,000 or $800,000 and reinvest into 2 new properties and still have some left over, which we actually used to fund a portion of the down payment for our primary house, which I'm sitting in right here in South Carolina. Those 6 properties in 2022 generated just shy of $900,000 in revenue, and our net cash flow was $365,000-ish for a single year, which is insane to think about for how much time and effort that we put into our previous jobs to not even make that level of income. But here we are working just a few hours per week on our investments. And not only do we have 300 plus K a year in cash flow, but we also have significant wealth built into these properties through equity, principal pay down on the loan, right? People are paying off the mortgages for us and they're appreciating assets over time. Now, the real estate market may have periods where it goes up like crazy, like we've seen in 2021, 2022, and then we may have periods of time where it comes down some. But just remember, we're investing for cash flow, not for appreciation. So we're going to get that appreciation over the long term. So real estate is a great hedge against inflation. So at this point in time, we're about 2.5 years into our Airbnb journey, and we have 6 properties that are going to do about $1 million per year and cash flow about $400K a year. So at the time, we had just launched our 6th property, right? My wife was pregnant, so we were preparing for the baby girl to get here. So we put a pause on our investments and focused on some other things and just getting ready for her to arrive. Later in 2022, we started to revamp our search for our next property. We knew we wanted to do a value add property and do something big in a market where we could become one of the, if not the top performer. We had honed in on a few different locations and found the right opportunity in Asheville, North Carolina. Now, as many of you are well aware, real estate prices have gone way up over the past few years, starting to come back down due to the higher or raising interest rates. But what this has done with the interest rates is it has decreased the buying power for all buyers across the country. And it's giving you more negotiating room on terms of the purchase. So we got a property, and if we were to get this property in 2021, I'll just be straight with you guys, we would have had to pay 100 or 200K over asking price and, waive appraisal, waive inspection, all these crazy things. But the tide has turned a little bit. So we got it under appraised value, under asking price, and we got the seller to pay $20,000 worth of our closing costs. So although the interest rate was a little higher, we had so much more wiggle room that we were able to, capture, some instant equity right off the bat, and then take some of the closing costs that we would have paid and then allocate that budget to design and rehab. This property, we had some extra funds to work with, so we went all out. It was a 6,800 square foot property. It's located about 10 miles to downtown Asheville and 8 miles to the Biltmore estate. And we went with a Roaring 20s theme and added a pickleball and basketball court, a putt-putt course, a game room, all these crazy amenities that we just knew people would love and nobody else in the market had. So this property we got for under $1 million. After repair value is going to be 1.2 to 1.3-ish. And it's going to bring in 300 to 400K a year in revenue. And our cash flow on that should be north of 150K, maybe 200K. So honestly, insane deal. So between these 7 properties, just 3.5 years into short-term rentals and Airbnb, we're going to do about 1.3 to 1.5 million of revenue per year and over $500,000 of cash flow on just 7 properties. You're not getting that type of cash flow or return on any other real estate investment unless you're doing fix and flips in the right economic cycle. So with all that being said, we have millions of dollars of net worth in real estate and we're generating this crazy cash flow. Here are some of the things that I would have done differently early on that may help you get started faster and also scale quicker. Number 1, you do not have to have a huge lump sum of money to get started. A lot of people presume that you need 20 to 25% down on a $1 million property and 100K worth of design and furniture. While you can invest a ton of money and make really high cash flow and high rates of return, you don't necessarily need that to start. First thing you can do is find somebody to partner with, right? That's the most common thing. Leverage other people's money, OPM, and partner with them on the deal. Maybe you bring no money to the table. You just bring the hustle. They bring the dollars and you guys form a good partnership. The second thing you can do, which honestly you only need about $10,000 to truly start, is rental arbitrage. Instead of buying a property, you're just gonna find a property to rent, get permission from the landlord to then sublet that property and run your business that way. Rental arbitrage is really amazing because you can scale your cash flow extremely quickly. Now think if you can get a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment or condo for less than 10K and it cash flows you $1,000 a month, now you have 10 months of runway before you can get the second unit. Now you're cash flowing $2,000 a month, right? So on and so forth. So you can see how it just snowballs over time. A lot of investors actually stick to this method alone because they are just focused purely on cash flow and not on buying property and building their net worth in those assets. Rental arbitrage is a strategy I've done on one property in the past, and it's also a strategy that about 50% of my clients in BNB Investor Academy start with, and the other 50 start and focus on buying. And a lot of them end up doing both because eventually you're gonna get tapped out on money that you can invest in by buying. So people pivot to arbitrage to scale cash flow quicker. Long term, I'd still encourage everyone to own real estate because you get a lot of other benefits in addition to just the cash flow by owning the real estate. You get principal pay down on the loan, you get equity and appreciation long term, and then the biggest thing, you get tax benefits. So you will pay less in taxes on that cash flow by owning than if it's just rental arbitrage or other earned income. The last strategy, which is an amazing way to scale with no additional money, is called co-hosting. Really, it's just a fancy way of saying property management. So let's say, even if you have no experience, this might be more challenging, but it's still doable. But network with real estate investors or long-term rental owners. And instead of maybe offering to do rental arbitrage, you could pitch them on, hey, if you furnish this property, I'll manage it for 10, 15, or 20% of revenue, and we'll run it as an Airbnb. So if you can do that and form a relationship or good network with of investors, and you could scoop up properties to manage for them, then you could start to scale this, again, with no money out of pocket. If a property does 100K a year in revenue and you're charging 20%, that's 20K in profit for you every single year. The other way to do this is to find properties that people are currently managing themselves, or they're paying one of the big box PMs that are probably overcharging and drastically under delivering on performance. And what you can do is charge less and over deliver. So there you have it. That's how we have become millionaires through short-term rentals and Airbnb. I hope you guys found this information useful. If you want some help getting started, you can send me a DM on Instagram, or you can follow a link in the description below. Highly recommend you checking out BNB Investor Academy. We've taught over 1,000 people the exact blueprint and roadmap of how we've been so successful and all the mistakes that you can avoid early on, and hopefully help you guys get started and scale faster. So check out those resources and make sure you subscribe to this channel. If you want to follow me on other social media, it's at melefante6. Appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you soon.